The city glowed under the muted haze of the evening. Streetlights buzzed to life, neon signs blinked across shops, and the faint hum of traffic filled the air. People hurried home, their footsteps echoing on the pavement, unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. Among them walked Amara Johnson. She carried a black leather briefcase and wore a perfectly pressed, navy blue skirt suit. Her stride was firm, her shoulders squared. She was a woman who carried the weight of the world, but refused to bow under it. She whispered to herself, "One more block, Amara. Home is waiting." But fate had other plans. A sudden screech cut through the night as a police cruiser pulled over beside her. The flashing red and blue lights painted the sidewalk. Onlookers froze. Two white male officers stepped out. The taller one crossed his arms, his gaze cold and appraising. The second, slightly younger, pointed toward her. "Ma'am," the tall one began, "you match the description of a theft suspect. We'll need to ask you some questions." Amara's brows knitted in disbelief. "A theft suspect? I just left the courthouse where I work." The younger officer motioned toward her briefcase. "Dark skin, business suit, carrying a bag." "That's the description we have." A small crowd gathered, curiosity buzzing. Whispers spread. Amara felt a surge of indignation. The sting of false accusation was sharp, but she refused to let it break her. She stood taller, her calm presence contrasting with the hostility before her. "I'll provide identification," she said evenly, "but I will not allow myself to be disrespected." The tall officer smirked. "You've got quite an attitude for someone being questioned." Phones emerged from the crowd. Someone was recording, others whispered, some in doubt, others in support. Amara breathed deeply. "Or maybe, officer, dignity is the only armor I have when faced with falsehood." The younger officer stepped closer. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Hand over the bag." Her hand tightened around the handle of her briefcase. She had important case documents inside, confidential papers. Giving them up meant exposing private legal material to people who had no right to see them. "I cannot," she said, her voice unwavering. "This contains legal files. Breaching them would be unlawful." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The officers exchanged irritated glances. The taller one muttered, "You're only making yourself look guilty." The atmosphere was charged. The air felt heavier. And then, a deep, commanding voice broke the tension. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop at the edge of the crowd. The back door opened, and out stepped a tall man in a navy blue suit, his presence exuding calm authority. His polished shoes clicked against the pavement as he approached. It was Judge Malcolm Johnson, one of the most respected figures in the city, and Amara's husband. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. "Isn't that Judge Johnson? Wait, that's her husband?" The officers stiffened, their earlier confidence wavering. "Is there a problem here, gentlemen?" Judge Johnson's voice was deep, steady, every syllable measured. The tall officer straightened his posture, trying to regain control. "Sir, we're questioning this woman. She matches the description of a theft suspect." Judge Johnson's eyes narrowed. "This woman is Amara Johnson, a respected attorney, and my wife." A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. Phones tilted higher, capturing every moment. The officers faltered. The younger one cleared his throat. "We were just following procedure, sir." Judge Johnson's tone sharpened. "Procedure is not an excuse for profiling." The onlookers stirred, emboldened by the judge's presence. Whispers turned to murmurs of support. "She told them she was innocent. This is profiling." "Good thing someone's recording." Amara glanced at the strangers around her. Strangers who, moments ago, doubted her, now looked at her with empathy. For the first time, she allowed herself a small exhale. She wasn't alone anymore. The taller officer shifted uncomfortably. His arms, once folded with confidence, now hung awkwardly at his sides. "Judge Johnson," he began carefully, "we were simply responding to a call." The judge tilted his head. A call that conveniently identified a black woman in professional clothing carrying a bag. "Do you know how many women that description fits in this city?" The officer hesitated. Silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. Amara finally broke her silence. Her voice was steady, controlled, but laced with emotion. "This is what happens when assumptions replace facts, when appearances dictate judgment. I wasn't treated like a citizen tonight. I was treated like a suspect without evidence." The younger officer shifted his gaze to the ground. The crowd nodded, murmuring their agreement. Judge Johnson placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. She deserves an apology. The taller officer's jaw tightened. Every muscle in his face resisted the words, but under the weight of the crowd, the cameras, and the authority before him, he relented. "We apologize, ma'am," he muttered stiffly. Amara met his gaze, not with bitterness, but with quiet strength. "I accept your apology. But remember this. Every time you mistake dignity for defiance, you risk breaking someone's life." The officer swallowed hard, unable to respond. The officers retreated to their car, shame painted across their faces. The flashing lights dimmed as the cruiser rolled away, leaving behind only murmurs and camera flashes. The crowd parted as Amara and Judge Johnson walked hand in hand down the street. To the onlookers, they weren't just a couple. They were a symbol of resilience, strength, and justice. As they walked, Amara whispered, I thought this might spiral out of control." Judge Johnson squeezed her hand gently. "You held your ground. You stood taller than they ever expected. That's power, Amara." Tears welled in her eyes, but she held them back. Not from weakness, but from pride. Back at the scene, the crowd lingered. People debated, voices rising. "Did you see how calm she was? They didn't even have proof." This happens too often. Something has to change. The incident had become more than just a confrontation. It had become a spark for dialogue. By morning, the video of the incident had spread online. Millions watched as Amara stood calmly, refusing to yield, and as Judge Johnson defended her with unshakable authority. Headlines read, "Attorney wrongly accused, Judge husband exposes police misconduct. Dignity under pressure. Woman's calm response inspires millions." The two officers sat in their precinct office, watching the viral video of themselves. Their smug confidence looked different on screen, ugly, small, and wrong. The younger one sighed. "We messed up." The taller one didn't reply, but the regret was written on his face. The police department released a statement. "We regret the wrongful questioning of attorney Amara Johnson. This incident reminds us of the importance of fair and unbiased policing. It wasn't enough to undo the harm, but it was a start." Amara was invited to speak at a community forum. Standing on stage, she addressed hundreds. "What happened to me was not unique, but what made it different was that I chose not to respond with anger, but with dignity. That dignity protected me and it inspired others. My hope is that every woman, every man, learns that silence and fear are not the only options. Standing tall is." Applause erupted. In the back row, the two officers sat quietly, listening. For the first time, they saw Amara not as a suspect, but as a human being. Her words pierced deeper than any reprimand could. Weeks passed, but the story remained alive. Students discussed it in classrooms. Families debated it at dinner tables. Activists used it in speeches. Amara's calm defiance had become a lesson for the world. Dignity is not weakness. It is strength. Late one evening, Amara stood by her window, city lights twinkling beyond. She thought back to that night, the fear, the tension, the humiliation, and then the pride, the realization that even in the face of injustice, she had not broken. Her husband walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "Still thinking about it?" he asked softly. "Yes," she whispered, "but not with pain, with purpose." And with that, she smiled because she knew her silent strength had become a voice for many who could not yet speak. This story teaches that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet refusal to bow, the calm insistence on dignity, and the courage to stand tall when falsely accused. Authority can intimidate, but true authority lies in character.